good story, and moving right along to our second last speaker for the night. I'd like to be able to introduce to you, let me see where I have got this here. I have all my work done. There we are. Imelda Poole will share with us about awareness raising that takes place throughout the RENATE network. We know that awareness raising is at the heart of religious sisters and their lay associates throughout all walks of life, be it awareness raising around poverty, human trafficking, exploitation, injustices in general. But specifically for our purposes in RENATE, we're looking at how the religious sisters look at every possible opportunity to ensure that none of us can say, oh, I didn't know, I didn't realize that. But because through their careful observations, honed listening skills, and skilled negotiators they are, religious sisters raise the bar for all of us when it comes to informing the public, challenging stereotypes, and the promotion of behavioural and systemic change. So in this regard, Imelda Poole, CJ, former president of RENATE Europe and heads up the Mary Ward Loreto Foundation in Albania. Imelda was awarded an MBE from the British royal family in recognition of her services to end modern slavery. And the MBE was awarded, I think, in 2018. And subsequently, for her work has been recognized as a US Department of State tip hero in 2021. So Imelda, very humbly, shares with us about the work of awareness raising within the RENATE network. And of course, we'll also add a specific dimension and reference to the work in Albania as well. So over to you, Imelda. Welcome.
Thank you, Anne, for that very kind introduction. And it's just lovely to be with friends here online. I want to share with you a PowerPoint, but before I do, I think it's been interesting listening and to such powerful presentations up till now, and becoming more and more aware as I listened one after another to what a degree we're all overlapping. And especially, as you say, Anne, in this area of awareness raising. So for that, I feel very moved. I have been very moved tonight. And I just think my presentation is perhaps bringing a lot of the thinking together by recognizing the voice of the survivor at the beginning. So we're going to listen ultimately to 5 aspects of the actual trafficking of human beings from those trafficked, taking it from the angle of people working in the fields, people working in hotels, a footballer, and so on. And different people will be speaking the voice of that. So let's share the PowerPoint and we'll begin. Now, somehow I have to put on the sound, but I actually can't. Wait, let's see if I do that. Sound, here we go. Share. Is that okay?
That's just great, Imelda. Thank you.
Okay. So in this first slide, I'd just like to introduce you to our RENATE Awareness Raising Task Group. There are, in fact, 11 members on the books for this group. Not all, of course, will come every time, but we do come from 8 different countries. And that is very significant of our task groups, that we bring such a multitude of experiences to the group itself, just by the very fact of where we come from. Over the last couple of years, nearly 3 years, the objective of RENATE has been for the awareness raising task group to focus on schools. And indeed, the idea was to bring all 30 countries engaged in this work, and also to look at the manner in which we can involve as many schools as possible. That means up to 30,000 students during this project. obviously the awareness raising task group wasn't able to do all this on our own. And we have to thank the comms team in RENATE for outreaching on our behalf to so many other countries. And we all beavered away together and achieved the goals that were set by the project itself and RENATE strategy, you might say. So it was just an exciting time. All of us in the group itself went to many schools, and we were really humbled and moved by the many questions and comments that students made during these presentations. The second aspect of the work, which has evolved, is that in the actual meetings, the different members have shared their experiences of awareness raising, whether it be in the field of hospitals or prisons, or back in the schools or universities indeed, or even in community groups or ad hoc groups that may have emerged, or in partnerships, say with the Red Cross or other organizations in a country that may invite us in to speak. Awareness raising brings in pretty well all the task groups, because it has to include law, it has to include advocacy, it has to include Parliament, and way out to there, the Council of Europe. So it's a mighty task of trying to bring all of those that knowledge together. And tonight, that's what we're doing through these inputs. So I'm going to move on from there. I could say a lot more about the impact of that sharing, because of course we learn from each other, don't we? And therefore we change maybe our methodologies, or we, like in the Malta, they did this most extraordinary approach to awareness raising with crafts, with films, with working with different groups and universities. And then they had this mighty exhibition in which all of these events were displayed in one wonderful weekend. So we learned so much from that and from each other. So I'll move on now, and just gently, you might like to move into an almost meditative, prayerful attitude or quiet stance, where we listen to the voices of those who've been trafficked. And different members of our RENATE will be reading some of their voices out for us. And in this first slide, we listen to one of these trafficked who desired to be filmed and to say his own truth. And this is Julius. And he came to Albania just about 14 months ago, where I met him for the first time the day after he'd arrived with absolutely nothing, having lost everything. And now I let him tell his own story.
I am Julius from British Southern Cameroons. I left Cameroon because of the civil war that has been going on in Cameroon for 7 years. Like a man, I wanted maybe the future of my children. I had to leave. So I saw this guy in the church who promised he was going to do me a work visa for Albania. So I had to spend all my savings, to an extent of even selling my only land, to give to this guy, with the amount of more than 6,000 euros. On arriving Tirana, the capital of Albania, I discovered I was duped. I called him and I told him, here am I see people with placards. There is nobody to welcome me. He said, just make me a short video of your arrival, which I did. And he sent me to his friend, a black Nigerian guy like himself. He treated me like an outcast, started asking me money and threatened to send me out of his house at midnight. I had to beg, and I gave him $20 before I could have a night. The next day, I relocated. I had to locate the cathedral. I happened to come in contact with Sister Imelda Poole, who asked me and was like, she was interested instead with my singing style. the way I sang. But I told her I have a problem. When I explained myself, she got her phone and called a RENATE crier, and we started the process of asylum the next day.
So now we'll move on and invite Gabriella to speak for Zed.
I do not feel safe or well in Albania. I speak French. I really need to leave and get another job. I am working, but not paid. The boss said he would give only $200 each month. Our contract says we would be paid €400 as a machinist in a tailoring factory. In fact, we are only cleaners. The Asian people do the machining. They are slaves. They live in the factory, work long hours, and I do not think they get a just wage. Many have fled. I sleep at a hotel of our boss, but he didn't want to pay a salary anymore. Now I have no money for food, and my children back home have no schooling. She had no work permit and no money.
So she's now in France and working with permit to work. So maybe Magdalena could read for Zed.
I was taken at birth and was not raised by my mother. I grew up, and when I had a baby, my baby was also taken from me. I tried to run and was threatened with my life. I fled to Albania. I had nothing when I arrived. It was winter and it was very cold.
Initially, Zed went to our asylum center, but she got very sick. She couldn't cope with the food. By this stage, she had documents through Mary Ward Loreto's lawyer and was able to get work with enough money to get her own flat. She's an extraordinarily resilient survivor of human trafficking. Please, Patricia, would you read the next one? Thank you.
One week ago, Nurambi reached out.
You need to go back, I think.
Sorry.
There.
Sorry. Sorry, don't know what's happening. Sorry.
One more. There we are. Thanks, Imelda.
Sorry.
No worries.
Is that the one?
That's it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nurambi reached out for assistance, explaining that he was jobless, having been scammed by an agent who took his football manager's money, intended for a football team placement in Albania. Everything was through WhatsApp. He was lonely, tired, and without money, until he met, within a day, Mary Ward Loreto's lawyer to discuss asylum seeking. He was made an appointment at the migration center. Despite facing challenges like a long trek to the appointment and limited transportation options. Nurambi remained hopeful about gaining asylum and finding safety, food, and shelter. He said, "Everything goes with sacrifice, so the trekking means nothing to me."
Thank you, Patricia. And please, Sorika, could you do this final one? Thank you.
Good evening. Sorry, I was at work. I'm working in the fields. Once again, thank you so much for your help. Yes, it is really difficult. And on top of that, they don't pay. We're making tomatoes, chili peppers, and cucumbers. I'm 2 months into working without pay, and the guy keeps giving me false promises every time. I work between 8 and 9 hours a day and have 1 day off each week. I came on a visitor visa. It was the only way for me to leave quickly. I'm 4 months here. I had to flee from war because of this separation situation. I witnessed many events that endangered my life, and I fled urgently. Many of my childhood friends have lost their lives. I have no documents. My village is on the border, and when the soldiers arrive, they forcibly rape the women and force the men to fight with them. My sister and my mother often receive threats. I have 4 sisters and a younger brother who lives in my capital. It's the government that refuses to find a solution to this problem. Entire villages are deserted. 1 in 10 has lost a loved one in this war. Now I have seen the Mary Ward Loreto lawyer, and I'm currently at immigration. They've already taken my fingerprints and photos, and they asked me to wait. He is now living safely in the asylum center, and the officials are checking out his place of work in the fields.
Thank you very much, all of you that read. Very grateful. And I know those who spoke these words are very grateful that their voice is being heard and that tonight they have come out of the shadows. I think there's an extraordinary quote of Maya Angelou, and she says, "There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." And so today, we hope that these young people are being enabled and empowered to bring that story out and to have a little touch of healing on their journey to survival. Last week, I was in a shelter, and there were 30 young women in this shelter. They came from South America, from China, from Taiwan, from Vietnam, from America, 1 person, and a couple from Albania. And all of them had been trafficked from tourist jobs, given no wage, working up to 14 hours a week. 2 girls I'm seeing at the moment have fled from a tourist place because of this terrible trauma that they experienced in working in a hotel there. Hardly any money given and hardly any food. And the impact is just unbelievable. The violence that's been treated on them psychologically and physically beggars belief. Now they are strong and resilient, getting their papers. They are either in flats trying to get jobs or indeed working with not a big wage. But we all have to bow our hats to them for the incredible bravery and courage they have. And nearly all of them send 2/3 of whatever money they earn back home to feed their children or their sisters or brothers to get to school. You wouldn't believe it. I'm just overwhelmed from these stories that are now happening in Albania, where we never believed it could be true. So what did we do at Mary Ward Loreto? This is a new phenomena for us, and it was really very important that the services were there. And so funding was in fact gained from Conrad Hilton Foundation to a special fund, not the one that's funding RENATE, but another little pot of gold. And we've been able to open an international centre in December, which is being reconstructed, and employ our new coordinator, a lawyer who had been working for IOM, so had many experiences and expertise as a lawyer working with migrants and indeed trafficked people. So we move on with now having 2 advice and service centres in Tirana, one for internationals, but her coordination is extended out to 2 psychologists who work in the other centre, so that if our victims and survivors are in trauma from their experience, they do have that backup support. But more and more, we're now seeing the need for having social workers and food banks and employment agencies. And it's extraordinary how this work, beginning with just drop, meeting somebody at church or on the street. Like last week, I met a young woman in a kiosk, and she was one of 12 victims. And I was just buying a few nuts, and she told me this story after a bit of chat. 12 victims, she's one of them, and has no passport and no documents, all held by her employer. They're working for all the hours God gives them and little pay. So this is just like on the street, in the fields, in the church, that these foreign internationals who have been trafficked in their countries or in Albania are coming up out of the woodwork. The project that began 2 years ago overlaps with the whole idea that Brian so powerfully was sharing about the absolute necessity for research, and for research to be with the victims and survivors. And this is with the Asian community that started 2 years ago, because there were so many coming. Before all the other internationals were coming, we were more and more overwhelmed with young trafficked people from the Philippines, from Vietnam, from Indonesia, and from India. And so we got funding from Mary Ward International Australia to, first of all, do a mapping of this crisis. And secondly, and that's really raising awareness of and advocating for human rights. And so the consulate from Italy was over, the Filipina consulate, embassy from Italy and consulate in Albania, got engaged in human rights action work. So awareness raising, protection, grassroots, shelter work. Often we work with shelters to pass on the needs to them to protect. And you'll see in this round circle, we're actually at the stage of empowering the Filipino community to be leaders in their community. They are survivors already. They engaged in writing this handbook for migrant workers in Albania, and also they are the voice behind the research and veiling the silence. So we have a handbook, we have a guidebook for foreign internationals coming into Albania, and we have the voice of survivors leading the way. And that is the heart of awareness raising, is to bring the voice of survivors to the front line. And the most recent action is a research hub, because like the rest of RENATE, we know that awareness raising is also connected with research. And this is qualitative research, nearly always with some data. And our CEO, Redion Chiazi, is a keen researcher himself and is very experienced in research. And he understands that Mary Ward Loreto, like all the foundations that Mary was talking about in the Council of Europe, all of these NGOs have incredible data that can be brought to the front line. They are the voice of the trafficked. And they are that's the quantitative research that is behind these documents like Beyond the Borders, which is really about the massive migration of Albanians out of Albania, especially young men, and why. Why is there such hopelessness, and why is there a gap in the job market to bring in Africans and Asians to fill those gaps in vulnerable environments of trafficking? Because the young men have gone, the young women are going, the intelligentsia have gone, because they've lost faith in Albania itself. And tourism is exploding here. So we have a massive, massive numbers, thousands coming in only over this year, and more will come. This is last year, more will come this year. So all of these tentacles, you might say, coming out from the mission, with all of us in the NGOs in Albania, and would this be the same for different reasons in most countries in Europe. And so finally, we come to look at what is happening to enable us to do this, and it's the fundraising. So we have many volunteers. This is a beautiful volunteer that came to Albania and made that film of Julius. They're all filmmakers that came, 3 of them for a week, and they have done flyers and pictures and helping us to raise awareness in a more beautiful way and a more dynamic way. So stories and partnerships in collaboration are so important right across borders to help us to establish a louder voice and a keener advocacy. And so, yes, we do go on platforms nationally for NJPICN, and we write in the tablet, and we're at the universities, and we go to the UN if called to speak out and raise awareness with webinars online very often, like this one. So RENATE is leading the way across borders in all of these ways, and it's quite an extraordinary and dynamic network, and I'm grateful to be part of this. So thank you to everybody.
And thank you, Imelda, for that very encouraging presentation there, because I think what we're hearing is certainly the sadness and the dejection and the heartbreak of the breaches of trust that led to all of those people being abandoned and exploited and trafficked, and yet you end in a powerful sense of hope based on the collaborative processes across the network of all of the members of RENATE. So thank you, Imelda. And I want to echo your thanks to our narrators who read so beautifully and added great depth to the stories. That is Sorika and Sister Patricia Mulhall, and Sister Gabriela Hassayura and Sister Magdalena Eichinger. So it was a very meaningful and very powerful presentation on our awareness raising in RENATE. Thank you, Imelda, and all.